With just 1 week to go before Election Day, President Trump and Joe Biden are making their closing arguments to voters. As you can see here, many braved long lines at polls in New York City and in Texas yesterday. 64 million Americans have cast ballots early, surpassing the total number of early votes in 2016 by more than 12 million. In their final push, President Trump and Joe Biden are focusing on key battleground states which could make or break their campaigns, including Texas and Pennsylvania. For more, let's bring in CBS News campaign reporter Kara Cordy. So, Kara, Texas is among the states that has already surpassed its 2016 early vote totals. What kind of turnout are we seeing in Texas? I noted this morning on the CBS News Battleground Tracker map that Anthony Salvanto showed us that Texas is not blue, it's not red, it's pink.
Vlad, don't take any more of my talking points as we move forward. Yeah, that's exactly. It's an amazing thing that's happening in 2020, specifically in Texas, that the state that has long been reliably red is turning purple. Biden is up there by 2 points, according to the CBS News Battleground Tracker poll. So what is happening in Texas with the early vote? Texas is used to voting early. In 2016, more than 60% of the total vote there came in early voting, whether through mail or mostly in Texas is early in-person voting. But we're seeing already, Vlad, they have just trounced that number, and they are nearing 80% of their total 2016 turnout right now in early voting. So how did they get there? Well, since 2016, Texas has seen more than 3 million new voters registering, and 2 million of those 3 are Hispanics. So if you are a Republican, that makes you nervous. That is a good thing for the Biden campaign. That's a good thing for the MJ Hagar campaign for the senatorial race there. When you think about that registration, the numbers are going up. Zero in on Harris County, where Houston is. One of the largest counties in Texas, 4.7 million people live in this county alone. They are seeing historic levels of turnout. They have to accommodate so much early voting, Vlad and Anne Marie, that over the next 2 days, polling places in Harris County are staying open until 10 o'clock, and Thursday and Friday of this week, 8 polling places in Harris County will be open 24 hours around the clock. So they are doing, local county officials there in Harris County specifically are doing everything they can to ensure that people have enough time to vote to get in no matter what their schedules are.
So then, why isn't the president going to Texas? He's going to Michigan, he's going to Wisconsin, he's even going to Nebraska, but he, at least thus far, doesn't have Texas on the schedule.
Right now, he doesn't have Texas on the schedule. We'll see. Things may change. You know, there are only so many places you can get to when the clock is ticking, right? But it is surprising at this point to see the numbers so close in Texas. Again, they have that crucial Senate race with John Cornyn versus Democratic challenger MJ Hagar. Think back to 4 years ago. You'll remember that Beto O'Rourke ran against Senator Ted Cruz. Now, he lost by 200,000 votes, but Donald Trump won that state by 800,000 votes. So there are voters in Texas who are willing to split that ballot to not support President Trump, but to support the Republican senatorial candidate. So we're watching that to see if that trend continues. But again, when it comes down to that CBS News Battleground Tracker poll, pretty amazing that Trump is up by only 2 points there within the margin of error, and it really has a lot to do with those new voters in the state of Texas coming out.
Right. So the question then, Kara, becomes, are the numbers, the swell of numbers that we've seen of new voters, which generally tends to favor Democrats, as you point out, is that enough to buttress what the Trump campaign says is what they're expecting, which is in-person voting on Election Day, that the base of the president's supporters listening to him are going to turn up in massive numbers on November 3rd. So what are some of those trends that you're watching?
Yeah, exactly, Vlad. We've seen the president time and time again cast doubt on the validity and the accuracy of mailing in ballots in particular. And it seems that his supporters are heeding those words. Now, up until now, the majority of votes have come in through mail. But now we're starting to see more early voting, in-person opportunities open up across the country, and Republicans are starting to close that gap. It's an important trend. It's a crucial trend that if the president wants to win re-election, he has to continue to see. Republicans need to show up early in person or on the day on November 3rd itself. Consider this, in 3 different battleground states, Colorado, Florida, and Nevada, we've seen huge numbers of Democratic votes coming in by mail, but when it comes to the early in-person voting tally so far, in Colorado, Republicans lead Democrats by 14 points. In Florida and Nevada, Republicans lead Dems early in person by 12 points. So they're wondering if this trend is going to continue. The president has to win that election day margin, but there are exceptions in the battleground state of North Carolina, where Democrats outflank Republicans in voting by mail, but also in person. So far, Dems lead Republicans by 5 points for in-person voting. But this is the crucial metric come November 3rd. Will Republicans show up? Will they support the president on election day?
All I'm hearing from you right now is that it's going to be a long election night, election week, hopefully not election 2 weeks. That's what I hear when it comes to counting these ballots. We mentioned earlier that the Supreme Court ruled that ballots in Wisconsin must be received by election day. There was a similar disagreement in Pennsylvania, here where I am, and the conclusion was that as long as the ballots were postmarked by election day, they could be counted. In Wisconsin, they have to be there by election day in order to be counted. So what sort of impact will this have on voting in Wisconsin in the middle of a coronavirus pandemic?
Anne-Marie, this is what makes voting by mail just a little more complicated to voters, right? Because if you're handing in your ballot by mail, if you're mailing it in, you have to meet a deadline. It's kind of like homework for all of us. If your teacher gives you a math assignment that's due Tuesday and you send it in on Friday, it's not going to count. And this is what happened in Wisconsin, is that the Supreme Court decided to keep the ballot deadline on election day. Postmark doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if you get it in at 12:01 a.m. November 4th. Your ballot must be received by election day. And the reason why that really matters now, and the reason why it was shocking to some people, is that the Postal Service has recommended voters leave at least a week to return ballots. So we're all checking our calendars. That day is today. Election day is in a week. So if Wisconsin voters are sitting on their mail ballots, if they have not returned them in yet, they should not mail them in now. There are 400,000 mail ballots unreturned in the state of Wisconsin. And so what those voters should do, if they want to ensure that their vote is counted, they should not mail it. They should not send it to the Postal Service, because there's a risk that it may not be received in time. They should find a drop box in their county. They should go to a polling place and hand it in, or you can bring your blank ballot to a polling place, nullify it, and vote in person. But it's very important now, with the Supreme Court decision coming in late last night, that Wisconsin voters, really the time to send in ballots via mail has passed.
Kara Cordy, that is really good advice for people. A lot of people are probably going to be scrambling right about now. Thank you so much.